Hello and welcome to our virtual field day. I'm Linda Hoyke from the Innovative Weeds Research Team at Sydney Uni, Narrabri. What we have behind me here today is a crop of Nasma faba beans. These have been planted in different row spacings and different populations to simulate high crop competition and low crop competition. And then what we've done after that is introduce weeds at different times. So we've introduced sowthistle at planting, 3 weeks after emergence, 6 weeks and 9 weeks after emergence. So we have sowthistles that have come up with the crop and then also have come up after the crop's emerged, and the crop should be competing more with those because the crop was more advanced. We'll show you what it looks like in the plots. This plot is a low crop competition plot with sowthistles introduced early in the season at planting. So we've taken a dry matter cut out of the middle here only yesterday. Opens up the plot so you can see a bit better. But we have 3 rows here of faba beans at a 20 plants per metre density, and sowthistle introduced at planting. So what you can see here is that the sowthistles have grown right up, they're flowering, they've got seeds on them, and they're poking out the canopy of the faba beans. Here is another low competition plot where the sowthistles have grown right up through the canopy and are releasing seeds out the top of the crop. These sowthistles were planted at the same time as the faba bean crop. This is a high competition Nasma faba bean plot. This is sown at 30 plants per square metre and 25 centimetres row spacing. In this, the sowthistles were introduced at planting, and we've cut a dry matter strip out of here yesterday so we can see in amongst the rows. When we look down in here, there are sowthistles. They started to grow, there's one there, but the crop has outcompeted them and they haven't managed to come up above the crop canopy. No sowthistles sticking out of that plot. We also found this season that the low density crops were far more affected by aphids and subsequently virus. So there's quite a few plants that are yellow and have leathery leaves and sometimes wrinkled leaves, just depending on which virus the aphids actually infested them with. This is a low crop competition plot of Nasma, 50 centimetre rows and 20 plants per square metre, infested at sowing with sowthistle. So this has had a dry matter cut taken out. This is why there's a gap. It was only taken out yesterday, but here's the sowthistles growing quite well and heading up towards the canopy. Here is one that's actually emerged from the canopy and is flowering. Even a 3-week head start in the crop has resulted in much smaller sowthistles that are still down below the canopy and are not going to reach flowering before harvest. These sowthistles were established 6 weeks after the planting of the faba beans. They're still quite small, down below the canopy, and will only become a problem after harvest when they will be easier to control. This is a high competition Nasma plot. Sowthistles were established here at the same time as the faba beans, but because this is high competition, narrow rows and high crop density, there's really only very small sowthistles in under the canopy, and they haven't managed to grow up through the crop. We also have weed-free plots here. These have been kept clean with no weed introductions That is where the dry matter cut was taken yesterday, and these will be used to compare weedy versus weed-free yields, and also the effective yield at introduction of weeds at different times. The faba beans this season have had several problems with low temperature after reasonable temperatures, so they weren't frost hardy. Then they had a -2.5, which knocked a lot of the flowers off and also caused quite a bit of canopy collapse and lodging. There's decent yield in there now, but we did miss out on a lot of the early flowers, and some of the pods were actually killed by the -2.5 frost. This is a low competition, low density, 50 centimetre row spacing plot of boundary chickpeas with a high density of south thistles established at 9 weeks. The south thistles are actually coming up really well, and fairly soon these are going to be competing quite well with the chickpeas. There's quite a lot of south thistles coming up in here. This is a competitive plot of boundary chickpeas, 25 centimetre row spacing and 30 plants per square metre of boundary, with south thistle introduced at a low rate at the same time as the chickpeas were sown. What we have now is quite large south thistles. They're still in amongst the canopy, but they're in there, and probably before this is harvested we'll have south thistles with seed heads popping out of the canopy. This is a competitive plot of boundary, narrow row spacing, 25 centimetres and 30 plants per square metre, with south thistles planted 3 weeks after the crop. It's pretty clean except where we have a gap, and where there's a bit of a gap we've got south thistles coming up in there. So here's the full chickpea trial, weed free, late established south thistles in competitive crops, early established. There will be large south thistles down in there. So thanks for trying out our impromptu video field day. Yep, there's a plane coming into the field, so I best leave.